Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. The motion for today's debate is, this House believes that New Age wellness culture has done more harm than good. Representing the proposition, we have the team from Peru, and on the opposition, we have the team from Armenia. From the proposition side, our speakers are, first speaker, Fatima, second speaker, Brianna, third speaker, Leandro, and reply speaker, Brianna. On the opposition side, our speakers are first speaker, Anand, second speaker, Ashara, third speaker, Daryl, and reply speaker, Ashara. Each speaker will have 8 minutes to deliver their speech. The first and the last minute of each speech is considered protected time, during which points of information, POIs, may not be offered. The judges will signal the end of protected time at the 1 minute mark, after which POIs can be offered, and will signal the return to protected time at the 7 minute mark. At the 8 minutes mark, they will give a double clap or ding to signal the end of the speech. Additionally, there will be 3 claps or dings at 8:15, and the judges will stop listening at 8:30. Best of luck to both teams. I now hand over the floor to our chair judge.
Welcome for voting fourth round for WSDC 2024. Let's just start with a quick introduction, then of course the general amendment. Hi, my name is Hans, I'm your chair. Pronouns will be Gaydon, but feel free to just revert the panel as collective, member of the House of Judges as per usual. Now I'll just let my panel introduce myself.
Hi, I'm Nicole, and on behalf of Round K or Caleb?
Cool. Just a general reminder, one, I'll help with timing. There will be bell in 1 minute, 7 minutes, like this. Just a general reminder, POI is highly encouraged, especially for POI adjustment, as well as vote engagement. Second thing, if you have anything to say, like gender pronouns or any disclaimer that you want to give, feel free to give it before your own independent speeches. If there's not, feel free to just start whenever you're ready. In this round, we are debating under the New Age wellness motion. Let's just start the debate. I call on option for speaker to give their speech. Here.
Panel, in this debate I'm going to prove to you how New Age wellness culture consists of harming the youth's perception of well-being, and we will prove to you in 2 different ways. First of all, by presenting you how the context in which wellness culture was born, how New Age wellness culture actually looks like, and in 2 main arguments. First of all, the damage to the youth, and secondly, the alternatives posted to this. Now, to begin with, when it was born. We believe that New Age wellness culture is born out of this idea of people being hurt due to previous generations, a youth that is hurt by previous generations and experiencing a lot of hurt, and actually wanting to learn more about this, wanting to learn about where the harms came from. And one of the branches in reaction to this is New Age wellness culture, which tends to look at the things that I can do to make this better, and tends to focus, as the influence I mentioned, in more holistic things, not necessarily science. So, how does New Age wellness culture actually look like? We believe that it's mainly promoted in social media, and this has a lot of key harms to it. First of all, it promotes overconsumption. We believe that social media is based on selling for profit, so I believe that now it's not a psychologist actually explaining to me nuanced concept, but it's somebody telling me to go to yoga and chill out, and that way I'll be better in life. Now, the second point is that it's idealized, and this is also targeted to thinking to sell. People want to sell their best face in social media. The wellness influencer you're seeing is not telling you about how shitty their life is and how you're going to improve all of this stuff, but it's just telling you about the good things and going out with their friends and taking a moment out of their days to have a better life. They also must be appealable to these brands, and hence they also prioritize these idealizations over actually showing how the true pain looks like and how the healing looks like, which is a complicated and painful process. Now, the third point is the oversimplification being made. We believe that New Age modern content is made each time shorter. We see this in TikTok, in Instagram, etc. So they use psychological terms in order to sell themselves as impactful and legitimate, however don't fully explain these terms and apply them to situations that don't even have to do, like saying that somebody is toxic for X reason, or just using gaslighting to explain some kind of situation. Now, we believe that this is expanded even more when it requires to promote a quick solution. We believe that it's not appealable to people to sell these ideas and sell these solutions if they're not quick. We want quick solutions. We don't want to feel pain. We want to get out of these situations quickly, and that's what social media and these influencers profit of. They have not experienced the actual nuances of the issue. They just want to sell you a product that supposedly will fix this issue. And they want to create instant benefit instead of actually focusing on helping this in the long term. And therefore, they do not promote actual nuanced information. Now, the first argument, which is the damage to youth, will be divided in three main parts. Now, the first part is about idealizing well-being and how this is intrinsically wrong for the debate. First of all, it's necessarily what you see in these Instagram ideals, or what you see in this societal ideal being sold to you of well-being. So this is due to constant repetition. You see this all the time, and echo chambers in social media or in general create this idea of this being what well-being is like. This is what your life should look like in order for you to achieve that well-being goal. It also is because of creation of parasocial relationships in social media. When you see influencers online, they are literally created to sell themselves as your best friend or as a relatable person. And hence it is very powerful what they do and what they sell to you. And third point, it is what you desire. It constantly plays into the fantasy you have in your head and the idealization you have in your head, or what you could desire. So it mixes the pain and suffering you have with creating an idealized version of what you would like to reach, but not necessarily explaining how your pain and suffering can actually be solved. Now, why this is all important and how does this impact the debate? First of all, well-being is now perceived as doing it all. Well-being is now just doing yoga and cooking green smoothies, but also going to work and having a balanced life with your friends, but also having a good life. So it's balancing all of these different things at the same time in a harmonious and effortless manner, which is actually unrealistic for the average person. It's also having it all. We believe that since it's highly linked to materialism, it's also seen as gaining a lot of these things and having this aesthetic lifestyle, or having these privileges of going on trips and stop working for some moments. We believe that it's also showing reasonably small struggles, because people still like the story of overcoming a struggle, right? But they don't want an actual struggle, something that is very difficult to the extent that you don't see at certain points the way out. You want something simple that can be overcome by a hero, and that way for it to be solved. So, why is this necessarily separate from real life and hence causes harms to the people? First of all, wellness is never achieved because of it being so idealized, and therefore it's frustrating for the average person. This inability to do all these things is terrible for them, because they believe that wellness is not achievable, which is something that is simply not true. They're just sold an idealized version of wellness. Additionally, they believe there's an inability to solve these issues, because they don't really understand the issues and just see them as something that can be fixed with buying a couple of crystals or a smoothie, or finding out an actual way to balance your work to life ratio. And therefore they are unable to actually understand where their root issues come from and actually solve them. Now, the second point is the validation of pseudoscience and how this actually harms these people in the long term. First of all, they misunderstand the terms being presented to them, like gaslighting or attachment styles, or calling people toxic and narcissistic just for doing one thing wrong. And therefore this results in it's because of superficial media selling it as something simple and using it to situations that do not apply to that. So it's also seen as disregard for medications. It's seen as something harmful or something toxic, unnatural, that you don't need to do. And how does this impact the actual person? The rise of fake diagnosis and black and white mentality of narcissists are all terrible people, you need to run away from that. Or if my boyfriend did not give me like 10,000 roses, he doesn't love me because I deserve that. All of these narratives actually try to get me away from pain or growth or self-realization, because they want to sell me an idealized version and make me seek short-term gain in short-term benefits. I will leave this person and try to find an idealized way of living. Or I will not focus on how I am actually reacting to a situation and why I'm the unreasonable one in a discussion, but I will instead leave because the other person is toxic and saying bad things to me, and therefore I need to leave instead of own up to my part or try to understand the other party, because all of these bad terms that are actually linked to horrible issues are just oversimplified and applied to regular everyday issues. We believe that it trivializes the actual problem, which hurts the people who actually suffer of these mental conditions, because now they are seen as stigmatized by all of this, and we believe it also limits people who probably have these issues and don't know about them themselves, but also limits your capacity to be with other people and to understand them. Older generations also disregard mental health due to this, since now your kid, every time something is difficult, tells you something is toxic or something is gaslighting, and therefore it's disregarding what actual science tells you and what actual psychology is looking for, and therefore depression is now treated by older people as just a throwaway term for being sad or something going wrong, which is not what depression is and not what it should be looked like. My second speaker will refer to you how their alternatives to this are better, but overall in the debate we prefer a world in which a scientific diagnosis from a psychologist actually leads to people understanding your condition and understanding its complexity, instead of just normalizing it as something that is whatever and that can just be thrown around, or being told that being sad is being depressed and that is something you can either A, fix with material things, or just isn't as relevant. Thank you so much.
Okay, I will start in my next word. Panel. So far, there are two clashes in this debate. I will break them down, explain why we're winning, and then introduce our third argument. The first clash is about the harms that are given particularly by this narrative, right? Our team has already explained why, firstly, there's overconsumption, and secondly, there's the idealization. Not only has team opposition not even engaged with the idea that it's idealistic, they haven't rebutted the point about the fact that it's sold by influencers. They have just asserted that it is not, and that it is something that also involves experts, right? We believe it is pretty intuitive to think it does not involve experts in the moment where it's alternative medicine. It means it's the alternative to the medicine where professionals already are, right? Why would you need alternatives from the people if they are the same people providing it? Obviously, it is not the same people. It is pretty obvious. Also, they have basically tried to explain why it is not going to be idealist, trying to say that people are going to go to doctors as well, and trying to make it not self-exclusive. Note that the only way in which they have tried to mechanize this is with one example, saying that if you get hurt, you will go to the hospital. We're not talking about literally if you get your leg cut off, you're going to go to the hospital. Obviously, that's going to happen, right? We're talking about mental issues, things that people associate with wellness, not things that people associate with, oh, I got my arm cut off, let's start putting rocks. We think obviously that's not the debate, right? So please don't escape from the motion. In regards to the harms that they are providing, they are saying that it is going to be beneficial because it's basically consisting on getting tools to take better care of yourself, right? Notice, panel, the lack of illustration in that statement. Getting tools. Obviously, team opposition avoids explicit in the fact that these are not just tools. These are extremely expensive materials, which are going to actually be emphasized in our third argument about why it is so expensive to buy them, why it is so time consuming, and therefore why it is so exclusive to people who are either very affluent, who have lots of wealth, or people who are going to be able or willing to make trade-offs, which is obviously not good, right? Spending time with your family versus trying to get, working extra shifts in order to afford that cream that is going to guarantee you a better impression on everyone else, right? Furthermore, basically team opposition's whole case can be synthesized on the lack of characterization, trying to confuse this narrative with promoting self-prioritization and being happy. We have already explained why that is already symmetric, right? People intuitively already want to be happy. There are already narratives, and there's already minimum wage. The state don't think you already cares about all of these things. Furthermore, we also think that family members care about these things, friends care about these things, people don't want to be depressed. Obviously, they already care about these things. We have literally given in the framing explanations as to why this actually rose in the first place. The fact that people are now more aware about problems problems and more interested in the solutions actually creates a space for people to try to look for solutions, and this is one of the ways in which people have tried to find a solution. So there is already awareness. If team opposition wants to claim that this is the only way in which people can take care of themselves, we have explained why there are many incentives for people to do that and why there are many ways in which they can already do that. Therefore, this is completely unnecessary. But in regards to our impacts, we have already given 5, right? Let's just refresh them so that team opposition engages with this in their next speech. Firstly, we have explained why it is frustrating because it gives no results. We have already explained why the fact that it is not involving a professional means that it is likely that there is no long-term following, so you cannot really get a thorough and a deep improvement, right? That means that people are going to be frustrated by the fact that the quick solutions that they were promised are not actually happen. Secondly, they're going to be unable to understand the roots for their problems, because the fact that this is, the fact that this is usually promoted by influencers or by short-term things that are sponsoring materials means that they are promising something that is immediate. And so the fact that they do not get satisfaction because they don't solve it immediately means that people now are confused of what the actual problem is. Accepted.
Therapy is extremely important, and most people do not access it because of the social stigma attached to it. Wellness culture involves a culture of self-prioritization, which opens doors to therapy. People under your side don't even go to therapy.
Yeah, not only panel is this one more example of how they are asserting things, they have then mechanized as to why the social stigma for therapy is so huge. We think that it is not huge, right? And this has been explained in our second class. We have explained why there are 2 types of psychology and of therapy, but I'm just going to emphasize this right now. The first one is the traditional therapy, right? Which is just basically going there, scheduling your meeting, which might be, more expensive, but it is not as expensive as the amount of materialistic things you are desperately trying to buy when you see that one isn't enough, and so you buy another, right? Notice, panel, that when you get therapy, at least you do get some limit of sessions in a week. When you are buying rocks, or when you're buying yoga mats, or you're buying creams to try to make yourself feel better, and you see no change, there is absolutely no metric as to how much is enough. There's no one who's giving you advice as to how much is too much. And the fact that these things are particularly expensive means that they're likely to overall be spending more money, right? Now, traditional therapy, why is this better? Not only because it's long-term and because the therapist takes into account your context, and so it's a deep connection, so it's not only emotional support, but it's likely to be more thorough, so overall you actually do get to solve the problem, so it's a process that lasts overall less, because instead of trying to just spend the rest of your life buying things and failing miserably in the attempt to solve your problems, you actually do get your problem solved and eventually need to stop engaging, right? But secondly, there's also a way cheaper way of this. Like, we think that it's likely that reels of therapy can come up. People who are trying to become therapists who are more well known so that more people are aware that they exist and become their patients, right? We do think that this is something that's ongoing. Also, there's communal therapy, which is extremely cheap. There's group therapy, which is also extremely cheap. You just need one psychologist, and then there are lots of people who are there benefiting from that psychologist. Therefore, the cost is splitted by all of the people in that group therapy. Opposition needs to engage with all of these ways, which are extremely cheap in order to deal with psychological issues now. But in regards to your third argument as to why their side is the one that is not being accessible enough, why is it particularly that in their side, they're basically saying that wellness is intrinsically linked to wealth, right? And the first thing is they need material things for their side to work. They need to buy crystals, they need to buy books, they need to buy alternative medicine, they need to buy healthcare beauty products, they need to buy yoga mats, they need to buy kits. We don't think it involves necessarily lots of purchasing, because people who are pushing this are either one, influencers who literally benefit from advertising products and hence getting paid by sponsors. We all know that social media doesn't usually pay lots to influencers, so the fact that they are having a living wage and enough quality of life to be able to be the role models and desired idols of other people is because they get lots of money from sponsors. But secondly, because companies who sell this also push it directly, like they have a profit incentive. Now, how much is it actually? How expensive is it? It's twofold, right? Firstly, the fact that their selling point is health means that they can get away with messages such as how much money is your happiness worth, or how much does your health matter to you, right? We think that this means that it's likely that they're going to have the capacity to charge excessive and exploitative prices because they're making people feel like what they are buying is happiness and healthiness, and that is simply not the case, right? But secondly, also the fact that there's lots of demand because they have propaganda, they have narrative, they have marketing, and people even feel guilty if they don't buy it, means that there are likely to be lots of people buying it, and therefore if demand is half, also it's going to be priced, right? Why is this bad? Not only is it bad because low-income people and just people from middle income, right, because these products are particularly expensive, feel like they can't access wellness because they literally can't afford it, right? They feel like the precondition for them to be happy, for them to take health care, for them to be responsible is actually to buy all of this, which means a monetary sacrifice, right? We think that people then are going to start taking maybe opportunity costs as to going in small trips with their family, and that will no longer be happening so that they can afford these things that they have been promised to guarantee happiness, or not buying games to their son, which is going to involve quality time with them because they think that buying another thing is going to be more effective. Overall, team opposition is only defending a world in which people are disappointed, frustrated, there's even more socioeconomic barriers and differences, and it's simply not beneficial. Thank you, proud to propose.
Hi, before I start my speech, is this an audible tone? Perfect. I'll stop. Three strategic flaws from opposition. First, it's not a rise motion. Two, they just assert things. I want you to look at every characterization that Fabio may provide you on how social media works and how that responds all the ideas of this nuanced, complicated analysis that people have in awareness. But third, notice how they think that this is the only narrative that exists about awareness. I do not believe this is true. We're going to win this by 3 points in this speech. First, about awareness. Two, about productivity. Third, about influencers. First, about awareness. Notice, most of the things they say are non-exclusive because they defend New Age well-being, no narratives of well-being in general. Why are they non-exclusive and there's still narratives to our side? One, because of generational trauma that they have already mechanized. If all of these people are hurt and they hurt their child, they have incentives to still demand ways to have well-being, of demanding to be better. Two, they're promotion of businesses. Psychologists, psychiatrists needs to rise their selves and therefore have incentive to promote them on things like shorts made by psychologists that can spare 5 minutes of a day to do 2 of those. Two, this look like TV, radio, of constant social narrative that, hey, you should go to psychologists, this is really good, you should really engage and look information. This belief that people are still aware of most of the issues that they claim. But second, even if that were not to be true and this narrative did not exist, most of their impacts are also non-exclusive to the average human experience. 3 things here. First, religion. Things like praying or meditation are like half of the population already does it because they are engaged in Christianity, Muslim, Buddhism. 2, role models. I think that people still see people who inspire them to be better, like your father, like your professor, who tells you that you need to chill out and you should not be overburned. That also exists in our world. But third, you have problems in your life that you need to solve, which means that you are already looking for information on how can I be a better person? How can I push myself together? Why am I more tired and I'm not that productive at work? This means that you already search for information or go to therapy. The responses they do are basically assertions. First, that there is a huge stigma against therapy. That is not true. That stigma is created in opposition when you say gaslighting and love bombing to everyone. But 2, they have a lot of scientific evidence to back it up, which means that the stigma is being broken down over time. But 2, they say this is costly, but they never explain why. 2 reasons why this is not the case. First, because notice that we live in a capitalist society which needs competition of different businesses. This necessarily means that if there's competition, prices need to go down, because if not, this is not affordable. If no one can go to therapy, then psychologists do not have revenue. But 2, because now it's easier to study these things. When they're being normalized, and most colleges offer a degree of this is not something that only one person or a small group of persons have, but rather it's in a career that has a different majorities, and therefore that can be engaged and reduces prices over time. No, you do not need this to be constant. Notice that you research information or going to therapy makes your life better, makes you have awareness. This is intrinsically good. Notice that just drinking water is not enough of a reason to support this narrative. I do not believe in the comparative of harm versus good. They win with only that impact. What does this do in that debate? In the best case scenario, better people are given info. right? Because now I don't go to the average influencer that tells me that you should not go to a psychologist and try this alternative medicine, and it's not necessarily what they're defending. Things like crystals with magical powers. I do not believe that if they have incentive to show and promote these problems and that I have the solution, I'm gonna tell you, go to therapy, you can solve it there. Because therefore you stop watching me, and I don't want to lose my TikTok views and my sponsors. But in the worst scenario, this point is symmetric, and therefore they don't have an exclusive good. Why this is important in meta? Because notice, when you have to balance out good versus harm, it's more important the specific goods or harm of the motion. If there's already narrative of well-being, this is not a specific good of a position, it already happens in Team Peru, and therefore the harms that Fatima and Brianna present you are in the comparative way more relevant. But even if there's more awareness that you don't buy my win exclusivity, let's weigh every impact in what the thing about awareness. First, and the idealization. Notice when you idolize things, you are frustrated. Even if you're aware that you have problems, if I don't solve it with just breathing, I feel frustrated because I see that my TikTok reels say me that I should. This means that you know things, but this doesn't materialize in a benefit for people, just in most frustration, and feeling that others have a better life than me, and therefore preventing happiness to happen. 2, let's see pseudoscience. Notice, when I tell you things like, oh, your relationship is toxic because he didn't bring you flowers, this does not generate real awareness. It generates an illusion of awareness. This is extremely problematic. 1, because it generates huge pain for people that make mistakes because they don't understand what they're saying, but 2, because it promotes these narratives throughout whole of society, and this means that older generations prevent the most vulnerable people, like 12, 13 years old, who actually need help, to say, oh, you're just inventing it because that's what you hear on social media. This is extremely problematic, because even if they have more awareness for adults that can take care of themselves and go to group therapy in college, now kids who just have access to, for example, a psychologist that's going to be paid by their parents are more stigmatized, and therefore they're affecting a most vulnerable population. I believe that this is horrible in and of itself. What does this mean? Everything that Fatima tells you is way more important than any point of awareness. Please take this account into education, yes.
The idea that, like, the fact that we told you that influencers need to be more, like, broad and more flexible because they want to attract more followers means that it is not an idealized life. It is one where wellness is more personalized. Engage to that.
Notice, I don't have to engage to a specific population. But that reason, Hollywood movies would not exist, because these look like super rich life that most people cannot access. You chose this life, and you promote this lifestyle of really expensive things and really of things that most people cannot access because it satisfies them, because it makes them feel like there's something to aspire for. But this frustrates them in the long term. I don't believe that people just adopt another lifestyle to be more appealable. They just have this huge lifestyle that people want and desire because that's the thing they see in the movies. And the second thing about productivity, what they say is that you have more rest and you can breathe and drink more water. But notice, this is extremely privileged. Like in a capitalist society, when you have to work overtime and you cannot rest, I cannot wake up at 8 a.m. and to do yoga, or I forgot to do readings because I'm really tired and I don't want to go in the day. When I'm frustrated because I'm supposed to have time to go out with my friends, but I need to pay the school for my children. All of these things that I have to constantly do to access all of these benefits frustrates me because I can't actually do it. It needs to be perfect because that's the way to solve my problems, but I cannot do it, and therefore this means harm. Notice then that the most vulnerable population, that are poor people, that probably are the ones who need more, this more, are actually affected. I believe that this is horrible in general. The last thing they say is that there's influencers who are now going to talk about superficial things like the shape of your face. I believe that this is extremely symmetrical. In both scenarios, there are influencers who talks about beauty and superficial things. I believe that they are already in your For You page. I don't understand why this is exclusive in their site. What have this speech done in the deliberation? First, I've explained you why most of their impacts are not exclusive. We do not need new age well-being to have well-being, because other narratives already push well-being in the society. Those narratives are not only making their case non-exclusive, but actually are made by professionals, which are systematically better at providing all of these messages. 2, even if awareness matters, when you are being gaslighted into thinking that you can have an idealized life, when you use terms like gaslight in an improper manner, and when you vulnerate the most young people, I cannot defend topside. I believe that even if that were to be true, poor people who are really vulnerable Now they cannot engage in the narrative of opposition because it depends on being in a perfect world when don't have to work 8 hours a day, and therefore they don't access their impacts. I believe that for any method you have to vote in Peru.
Thank you so much, third option. Proposition speaker for advice range to give the last of the debate. Third option speaker, closures. Here we go.
Okay, I will start in my next word. Teams of opposition's whole case depended on two premises that we have already rebutted. The first one is the fact that this immediate satisfaction and help actually works. And the secondly is that this was a precondition for narratives such as self-prioritization and medicine, right? Not only is the one about the precondition a complete assertion, because team opposition is basically debating like in the 1600s where we are in like excessive, extreme, abusive capitalism. We have already explained how there have been social movements. We have had multiple unions. We already respect like minimum hours and also minimum wage. We understand that we live in a society where therapy is a thing, where unions are a thing, where social movements are a thing, where people are aware and there's not much stigma of talking about psychology, of going to therapy, right? The fact that the whole framing has already been introduced since our first speaker, and it has just been absolutely asserted that the world we live in is one where you either have crystals, you have meditation, you have alternative medicine, or no type of mental health institution at all. That by itself is showing an extreme lack of engagement from team opposition, right? But secondly, we have already explained why all of the benefits that they are proposing are extremely they don't really have much plausibility, right? They're really uncertain. And from a level of uncertainty, we can wage ours over, right? It is certain that if you go to therapy, you will have help from a professional. You will be able to understand your problems, even if it's long-term. The fact that they give absolutely no degree of certainty except saying that, oh, well, medicine works, and, well, not medicine, but meditation works, and they're basically just saying that. Note how they are just defending one of the multiple examples they had. And by the way, we have already explained why that is symmetric, right? People are still going to have the benefits that they claim they can give if their benefit is just providing meditation, right? Firstly, we have explained how it is mostly cultural and coming from religion, the reasons why people enter in meditation in the first place. Secondly, we have explained how therapists can actually do recommend you to do all of these things, so it is also not exclusive for them. And thirdly, we have explained why the particular problem from their house is the fact that the way in which these things are sold and the people from whom these people the people who are pushing this new age wave, right? We have literally explained how it is mostly influencers, and the companies who produce these products, they're having absolutely no engagement whatsoever from team opposition. Taking into account that this narrative doesn't just happen in a vacuum, but it is pushed by someone, therefore we do understand that it has a profit incentive. We understand that it's lucrative. And because it is influencers who are pushing for it, we also understand that they are mostly profiting out of the rush of adrenaline and the rush of satisfaction and the rush of desire that they are proposing to these people, the small and ephemeral promises that this will actually help them solve their problems. Now, team opposition tries to counter this by saying, oh, well, it's better to solve them slightly than not at all because therapy is so expensive. Once more, not engaging at all with the multiple accessible mechanisms of therapy we have given. We have explained how sessions with groups are a thing, how therapists can be attending multiple people at the same time in a group that is a focus group or a group that is just group therapy, right? So it can be divided the expense. And furthermore, we have already explained how all of this basically is not happening in an abstract, so you do get to be accessible, and how it is particularly inaccessible from team opposition, because at least in our world, we're literally explaining how these therapies do solve the problem, but in their world, you never actually get to solve the problem, so you get in a vicious cycle where you keep on buying lots of small things that are apparently not that expensive, but overall mean a lot of things. And also, we have explain and mechanize how each individual thing is so expensive because they promise wellness, and so there's a quantifiable price for it. It gets to be abusive. Obviously, no rebuttal from team opposition once again. So not only because our benefit is weighing over theirs because of a criteria of certainty, but also because ours is more accessible and because we're actually engaging with their side, we believe it's a clear win for Pro. Thanks.